Hi folks, today we're going to look at conversions. So this is about measuring things. We could measure the length of something. We could measure the mass of something. We could measure time. There's lots of different things that we need to learn how to convert. So today we're just going to focus on two. We're going to focus on length and time. I'm going to start with time because I think that's probably the one that you'll find easiest, and then I'm going to move on to mass. So I hope you all know, we're going to start with time. I hope you all know that in 1 hour there are 60 minutes. Write that down if you didn't remember it. In 0.5 hours, that'd be half an hour, 30 minutes, because all I've done is I've halved the hour. 0.25 hours, remember that's a quarter of an hour. 0.25 is a quarter. That'd be 15 minutes. If you don't know any of these, you need to write them down. Now, if I had 0.75 of an hour, well, that would be these two put together. 0.5 plus 0.25 is 0.75. So that would be 45 minutes. You can also do some quite strange ones. You can have a third of an hour. Now, they might put that as 0.3 recurring, but a third of an hour, because an hour is 60 minutes, I can find a third of that. A third of an hour is 20 minutes. I can also have 0.1 of an hour. That's a tenth of an hour. What's a tenth of 60? Well, remember, a tenth means we divide by 10. So a tenth of 60 would just be 6 minutes. And because I can do 0.1, that means I can do 0.2. That would be 12 minutes because it's just 2 lots of 0.1. I could do 0.3. That would be 18 minutes because it's 0.1 and 0.2 put together. There's lots of ways you can find out all sorts of amounts of time. I could find a sixth of an hour, because remember, our hour has 60 minutes in it. So anything I can divide 60 by, I can find a sixth of an hour. A sixth of an hour would be 10 minutes, because all I'm doing is dividing the 60 minutes by 6. Give me 10 minutes. All these conversions that I've just written are really important, and I would write down any that you didn't know. Now, obviously, if you know 0.5 hours is 30 minutes, don't write that one down. But if you didn't know that 0.25 hours, a quarter of an hour, is 15 minutes, write that one down. And one of the really important ones I probably do want you to write down is this one. Because if you get asked for 0.8 of an hour, well, that's 8 lots of this. So we would need to do 8 lots of the minutes, 48 minutes. If it wanted 0.7, that would be 7 lots of this. So 7 lots of this. So you can use that 0.1 to calculate quite a lot of others. And just be mindful as well, the final thing I'm going to say is, if they ask you for 0.3, they're not asking you for a third. 0.3 would be these two put together. I've done it up here. So just make sure you know the difference between 0.3, which is 3/10, and 0.3 recurring, which is a third. Now, there's lots to remember in all of this. What I would like you to do is have a look. I know my screen's a bit messy. Maybe watch this bit again and just pick out, what didn't you know? Did you not know 0.1 was 6 minutes? Write down the things that you didn't know, because you're going to need them for the Hegarty Maths clip. The Hegarty Maths clip you're going to do is 7:09. You need to keep watching this video because there's another Hegarty Maths clip as well. But go away and do 7:09 with this information in front of you. Then come back and watch the rest of the video to get the information about length. We're also going to do length. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is length and converting between different lengths. So what we are dealing with is we're dealing with what's called metric measurements. I'm not going to deal with what we call imperial measurements. Now, you will have heard of imperial measurements. They're things like foot and inches. And if you're looking at something other than measurement, they're things like ounces and pints. So you will have heard of them, but we're not dealing with them today. So I'm just looking at metric. So for metric, what we've got is we've got millimetre, we've got centimetre, we've got metre, and we've got kilometre. Those are our metric measurements. Now we need to have a little look about conversions. So 10 millimetres is 1 centimetre. 100 centimetres is 1 metre. And cent means 100. So like you've got 100 cents in a dollar. You've got 100 years in a century. That prefix cent, or prefix, however you say it, cent means 100. Then we've got 1,000 metres is 1 kilometre. And again, that prefix kilo means 1,000. If I have a kilogram, that's 1,000 grams. So kilo means 1,000. Now these are your really important conversions. So they are what you need to write down. The next thing I want to talk to you about is how we go from kilometres to metres to centimetres to millimetres. And you can actually go in both directions. Now in the Hegarty clip you're going to do, they're actually going to ask you to jump sort of from millimetres to metres or from kilometres to centimetres. So this is another diagram that you probably need to copy and have a think about. Now, if I have 5 centimetres and I want to change that to millimetres, what I would need to do is times by 10. Because for every one of those 5 centimetres, remember 1 centimetre is 10 millimetres. So for every one of those 5 centimetres, I've got 10 millimetres, so I would have 50 millimetres. So that'd be times by 10. If I'm going from metres to centimetres, so remember, let's say I've got 2 metres and I want to know how many centimetres that is, well then I'm going to need to times by 100. Because in every metre, there are 100 centimetres. So if I've got 2 metres, that means I would have 200 centimetres. And you might be getting the gist of this. If you're changing from kilometres to metres, you would need to multiply by 1,000. Remember, 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres. So if I had 7.5 kilometres, I would have 7,000 and half, which would be 500 metres. And you don't really need to worry about the decimals too much. As long as you know what to multiply by or divide by, we're going to look at the divides now. The numbers they all move together. You just need to know what you're multiplying by. Because this is the other problem. They're not necessarily going to ask you to change from kilometres to metres. They might ask you to go the other way. So they might, for instance, give you that you've got 25 millimetres and ask you to change that to centimetres. And in this case, what you would have to do is divide by 10. So the number you're multiplying by or dividing by is the conversion that I did on the previous slide. And you've got to think, you know, that there's 20 millimetres in 2 centimetres, and that'll help you work out whether you're multiplying or dividing. I know that there's not going to be more than 25 centimetres, so I know I'm going to divide because I know there's 10 in each centimetre. So this one would end up being 2.5 because I'm dividing by 10. This does get quite complicated. I also didn't put the arrow there. So yeah, millimetres to centimetres. Now you can probably, hopefully, if you look at that, you can see a little bit of a pattern. If I'm going from centimetres to metres, well, I'm going to divide by 100 because there's 100 centimetres in a metre. If I had 620 centimetres, well, the 600, that's the full metres, and the 20 centimetres, that's going to be in my decimal. Now I can write that as well, 6.2 metres. And then obviously if I was going from, let's say we had 8,342 metres, and I want to change that to kilometres, Well, don't forget what you know. Don't try and get too bogged down with, oh, I'm timesing by, I'm dividing by this. Well, you know 1,000 metres is 1 kilometre. So that means that 8,000, that must be the kilometre, that 8,000 is 8 kilometres. And the other numbers will go after your decimal because they're the part of the kilometre, the 0.342. So try and focus on the bits you know. Well, the thousands must be the kilometres. And if you want a way to do it, you would divide by 1,000. Now, feel free to watch Mr. Hegarty's video as well. He might explain it slightly differently. If I've confused you at all, it might help to watch him. But what you're going on to do now is Hegarty Maths clip 692. Now, I've set both of these clips for you. The only thing I would say is Mr. Hegarty asked you to do things like change, what was it? It was something like 7 metres, and he wants you to go all the way to millimetres. Now, he doesn't set it out like I have. I've done this deliberately because what I want you to do, I don't want you to go, look where metres is, look where millimetres is. There's actually 2 jumps to get there. So if you're getting confused by the fact he's trying to ask you to make 2 jumps, just do one at a time. Okay, 7 metres. Well, there's 100 centimetres in each metre, so there must be 700 centimetres. And then think about the millimetres. Okay, so there's 10 millimetres in every centimetre, so I must need to times this by 10 because each of those centimetres has 10 millimetres, so there'd be 7,000 millimetres. And that's how his video makes it slightly harder. So that's the one you're doing, but don't be fazed by 2 jumps. Just set them out in your book as 2 jumps and think really carefully. So this picture that I've done here is probably going to be really helpful for you to write down, but do think about what you're doing and what you know these conversions. Have a great day, folks, and I will set you more work tomorrow. See you soon.